What's happening, financial coaches? It's Pete here. Hope you're doing well. I want to bring up something that has come up a couple times here, and that is going with your gut on things. And I am generally not opposed to going with your gut in terms of trying to figure out your direction in life, your purpose, your passions, your vacation plans. You know, you're looking at two and they're about the same and they seem pretty similar and the price is the same. Go with your gut on those types of things. If you are trying to select golf clubs and you're like, I like these two putters, they seem pretty close, but I feel like there's something about this one that I like more, go with your gut. However, do not go with your gut on financial rules, principles, and practices, because sometimes a lot of this does not necessarily make a lot of logical sense. A lot of things that are in the financial planning world are not necessarily intuitive. Some of these things are very specific and they might seem totally backwards, and yet they're laws. They're immutable laws in terms of financial laws of the country or regulations or tax law or whatever they might be. And I bring this up because in a couple of cases here, I have seen people say, hey, I came across something. My client came up to me and talked about some of these ideas like velocity banking or equity optimization or infinite banking. And I will see a lot of people weigh in on these and say, hey, you know what? You should only use life insurance for life insurance coverage, or you shouldn't do that, or this doesn't seem like that should be legal. I don't know that you can do this. If you could go by intuition on all these things, we wouldn't need real estate attorneys or attorneys in general. We wouldn't need CPAs or tax professionals or forensic accountants. There are so many details, and we, one, can't know them all. We can't necessarily be experts in them all. In fact, many of the major topics that I see, like Medicare, Parts A through whatever, are not well understood by people who call themselves financial professionals that might even say they're licensed in this business, and especially by financial counselors and coaches. And so when I see people say, hey, I don't feel like they should be able to borrow money out of their life insurance policy to pay for this and then pay that back without charging themselves interest or having some sort of penalty or something like that. That's just wrong. You can absolutely do it. In fact, I've loaned myself money for a number of different purchases or opportunities from my life insurance policies and paid that back. It's been an absolutely great way to be able to access cash quickly without any cost to me. And while I'm not necessarily endorsing one of these strategies to say, hey, this strategy works for everyone, or these tools should be used by everyone, what I am saying is that just because you're not aware of it, or it doesn't seem right, or something doesn't necessarily add up, doesn't mean you can't explore it. But don't let yourself be a victim of the Dunning-Kruger effect and think that because you've been in this business and that you've read some books and that you've been online and watched a bunch of YouTube videos that you are familiar with everything out there. I am not familiar with everything out there. I consider myself a lifelong learner. I love hearing about things that don't necessarily make sense because I want people then to explain them to me. I want someone who's an advocate for this or someone who is opposed to this to give me both sides of it. I want to know the pros and cons. I want to know the ins and outs. And I will tell you what, sometimes these financial concepts take me years to finally fully understand, to understand the nuance of it. And if I were to go back in time and look at myself 2 years ago, 3 years ago on some of these things, I'd say, hey, I was a skeptic too, or I don't think that these things can work, or they don't make a lot of sense. But if you do get into them and understand them, then they can. How many trading strategies are there that will absolutely work? Even something as common as trading options. I've talked about call spreads, making money if a stock goes up or down in some cases. They're certainly not for everyone, but a lot of people can't get their head around that there are tools where it may cost you nothing and if a stock moves in either direction or if a stock doesn't move at all. So a lot of these things take a while for people who are looking for very simple step 1, step 2, step 3, or things that are very intuitive. But just because they aren't intuitive, or because they are complex, or because they take years and years to actually master, doesn't mean that, one, they don't work, that they are illegal, or they might not work for the people that you work with. So just be open-minded to that. Put yourself in the mentality of a lifelong learner so that you don't put yourself in a situation where you say, hey, that doesn't seem like that should be allowed. That doesn't seem like that should work. And in some cases, it might be okay to say that you have some skepticism in it. But if you don't understand it, if you're not familiar with it, make sure you put that on there that, hey, that's not something that I've done personally. This is actually the first time I've ever heard about that strategy. So I think we should look into it. If it's something that you've heard someone advocate very strongly for, why don't we spend a little time trying to figure it out? Why don't we find an expert in this space? Why don't we read a little bit or watch some videos on it to see if this is something that's legitimate? And you might find out that your intuition is right, but you might find out that it was wrong. Certainly, there are people that don't believe that they should pay income taxes and have strategies around that. I wouldn't advocate that, but there are people doing it. And if you look into it, you can understand the pros and cons of it. And you might understand why I always recommend that people pay their taxes. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that I take everything at face value, but it also does not mean that I believe that all of the information about personal finance is in my head already. So be skeptical, be humble, but be open to learning about new things. You'll definitely be better for yourself and for your clients if you do that. I hope that helps. I'll see you later.